Hello, my name is Joanne Seward, and I'm the Technical Services Librarian at the Oak Creek Public Library. Thank you for joining me for this fourth and final video in the Intermediate Microsoft Office series. Today's topic is Publisher. Microsoft Publisher lets users create vivid, professional-looking publications without investing lots of money and time in a complicated desktop publishing application. As you become more familiar with Publisher, you will come to see that it is easier to use than Microsoft Word in regards to creating flyers, brochures, cards, and other publications that are less text-heavy. In today's class, we will be focusing on creating a sign and working with a template to create a trifold brochure. So the objectives, what we're going to focus on specifically in the video. We're going to create a sign using a background image and a text box, create a trifold brochure using a built-in template, work with various objects, including building blocks, placeholders, pictures, and shapes. And then lastly, we'll learn how to save as a JPEG or other image file. Let's start with a quick review of the parts of the window. The ribbon is across the top, this entire section across the top right here with all of our options. Inside of the ribbon, we have tabs, starts with File, Home, and then goes all the way to View right here. Inside of the tabs, all of our options are split up into groups. So this very first group right here is Clipboard. You can see the name of the group is right at the bottom of the ribbon. We have the font group. Anything that you want to do with font is in the font group. The paragraph, spacing, numbers, bullets, etc., etc., etc. So the ribbon is the whole, and then inside of there we have the tabs that split it up, and then the groups that split it up even further to group all of the similar options together. All right, underneath the ribbon, we have the rulers. So we have our horizontal ruler right here, that horizontal guide. So that gives us an idea of where we are on the paper. And then we have our vertical guide over here, our vertical ruler on the left-hand side. Once again, giving us an idea of where we are on the actual sheet of paper. On the left-hand side, this is the Pages preview pane. So this shows us a miniature of every single page that we have. Right now we only have one page and it's empty, so that's why that's right there. And then lastly, we have the status bar at the very bottom of our screen going across the very bottom, this gray skinny bar. So that lets us know how many pages that we have. And then the other important piece of this is the zoom. So you can magnify it by clicking on the plus sign. We'll zoom in on the piece of paper. And if you click on the minus sign, that will zoom out so you can see the entire thing. And just as a reminder that this does not affect how it's going to print at all. This is view only for at the very moment that you're doing it, while you're actually viewing it. The first exercise that we're going to do today is to create a sign. We want to create a larger size sign rather than just an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, which is what this is. You can see the piece of paper ends at 8.5 and ends at 11 down here. You can see the ruler guide right there. Okay, so what we need to do is create a new a new publication that is a different size. So we're going to go to File and go to New. And you can see under the templates, we have the blank 8.5 by 11 and blank 11 by 8.5. And then there's more blank page sizes. So we're going to go to more blank page sizes. And we're going to choose the size that we want. In this case, we want a very large size piece of paper, aka the 17 by 11. So we're going for landscape for our sign. So if I click on the tabloid landscape 17 by 11, you can see a preview pops up over here on the right-hand side. All we're going to do now is click on Create. All right, so now you can see this piece of paper goes all the way over to 17 right here, and then all the way down to 11. You can see the guide over there on the top and the bottom. So now that we have the correct page size, the first thing we're going to do is add an image. So we could add just a picture, just like a normal. So, normal, go to Insert and Online Pictures, and then insert the picture. We're going to do that, but we're going to do a little bit of a twist on it because we want this to actually be the background image. Basically, the key thing of that is we want it to stay where we put it. We don't want it to move around at all. So we're going to first insert an online picture. So I went to the Insert tab and then the Illustrations group here. I'm going to click on Online Pictures. I'm going to search for, in this case, we're making a sign that says, keep off the grass. So we're going to look for a picture of grass. All right, so if we scroll down, find one that we like, let's say we wanted this one. If I click on it, the little check mark pops up. That's how I know that that's going to be the one that's inserted, and I'm going to click on insert. All right, so there it is. So the problem is if I wanted this as the background image, if I just accidentally moved it without even trying to do that. Did you see that? So if I click, hold, and drag, I can move this wherever I want, which is great if that's what I want to do. But in this case, I want to put text on top of here. So rather than having to mess around with in the arrange group, this bring forward and send backward with the text and with the picture and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we're going to make our lives easier and just set this image right here as the background image. So we are going to right click on the picture, and then in the menu that appears, we're going to choose apply to background. There's two options, fill and tile. So tile, as you can see, are multiples of the same image over and over again over the piece of paper, which in this case is not what we want. We want to do just a standard fill. So if we click on fill, notice how the white background now is the picture. You see that? So what's weird about this though is it still has the original picture right here on top of it. So we actually have to get rid of this picture. So I'm going to right click on the picture and choose delete objects. Notice the picture itself is gone, but that background image is still there. And if I click, hold, and drag, it's not moving at all. I can't make it move. Okay. So this is nice because I don't even have to think about this anymore. This is just going to print on the piece of paper, the complete piece of paper right there. It will give you a little bit of empty space around the edges because, you know, whenever you're printing something, you can't print all the way to the very end of the piece of paper. But otherwise, it's going to be printing completely this image as the background. And now the key thing is we can put anything that we want on top of here and then not have to worry about sending something forward or backwards or etc. If you need to remove this image, like you decide that you don't want it anymore, you need to go to this page design tab right here. And then in the page background, you would do no background. And then that would get rid of it. You can see it's doing it right there. Okay. But in this case, we want our grass. So now that we have our picture, now is when we want to insert our text. So in order to insert text in Publisher, you need to insert a text box first. So we're going to go to the Insert tab, and we're going to choose Draw Text Box. And remember, it brings up this little plus sign cursor, so that's how we know where we are on the page in order to draw our text box, which we do by click, hold, and drag. So in this case, I know that I want it in a very specific place to start. I want it to be 2 inches in off of the paper. So 2 inches by 2 inches. You can see as I move my cursor, do you see how this line is moving up here in the ruler? And then the same thing on this left-hand side, that there's this line. So if I move my cursor over, I can see that eventually it's going to get right to 2 and 2. There it is. Okay. And it doesn't have to be like 100% perfect. In this case, I'm not, you know, that worried about it, but you can get very exact. So now that I have my cursor where I want the text box to start right there. I'm going to click and hold down, and I'm going to drag it down and to the right. And I know that I want it to go all the way over to 15 inches off of the paper. So you can see the cursor moved as I move up in the ruler guidelines. And then I'm going to move down to 9. So I want it 15 to 9. There we go. 15, 9. Good enough. Let go. There it is. Okay. So that's one example of how those ruler guidelines can assist you with putting things on the actual page wherever you specifically want them to be. Okay, so now what we're going to do before we start actually typing our text, you can see the cursor right here is super tiny. That's because the text size right now is set to 10. That's too tiny. So in this format contextual tab, in the font group, the first thing we're going to do is change the font. So if I click on the down arrow, and I know I want to change the font to Kristen ITC is the name. So I can actually type the letter K, and it'll take me down to the very first K, which in this case is Kristen ITC. So all I have to do is click on it to select it. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is change the font size to, I want it to change it to 160. Imagine this is this is 11 by 17 or 17 by 11 sheet of paper. So the text needs to be really big in order for people to see this. So if I click on the down arrow, though, you see the largest size is 72. Well, that's not big enough. I want it to be 160 instead. I know that that can fit on this size of paper. So in order to do that, you have to click in the actual font size box and then type in the number that you need. So I'm going to type in 160 and press enter. And now you can see my flashing cursor is way larger. That's what I want. We're going to change the color from black to white so that it actually stands out in this grass better. So I'm going to click on the down arrow to the right of font color. And I'm going to choose this very first white right there. I want to make it underlined, so I'm going to click on the U. And I want to make it bold, so I'm going to click on the B. So now that I have the font exactly the way that I want it, I'm going to type in my text, which is keep off grass. There we go. All right. And then the last thing that I want to do is align this so that it's centered. So in the alignment group right here, you can see there are these 9 sets of boxes with dashed lines. The very middle one, if I put my cursor on it, is align center. This is going to center it horizontally and vertically in the text box, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to click on there, and there we go. It is centered in our text box. I'm going to click off to the side, and there is our finished sign. So before we skip over to the next exercise, the last thing that we want to do with this is actually add an additional page. So right now we only have 1 page. Because we want to do this sign double-sided. If I went to print this right now and I chose double-sided, the front of it would say keep off grass and the back of it would be empty because there's no second page right now. So I need to have a second page in order to be able to print something double-sided. So with Publisher, it's a little bit different and as to how you actually add a page. With Word, you would just kind of keep on typing and press enter, and eventually you would get to the end of the page, press enter again, or keep on typing, and it will just automatically populate a new page for you. In Publisher, it doesn't do that. You need to actually force it, quote unquote, to add an additional page. So in order to do that, I have to go to the Insert tab, and then the very first group is Pages. In here, we have Page. If I click on the word Page, it gives me choices. So I can insert a blank page, so that would insert a blank number 2 page. We have insert duplicate page, which is what we want to do, and we'll come back to in a second. And then we have insert page. For insert page, that allows you to choose how many. So if you want multiple pages, if you want to duplicate all the objects on the page, if you want to create 1 text box on each page. So they give you all of these different options if you want it before the page that you're on, after, etc. So we're going to hit cancel because we don't want to mess around with any of that right now. We're going to go back to page and we're going to choose insert duplicate page. Give it a second and there you go. So you can see page 2 is exactly the same as page 1. So now if I went and I printed it double-sided, it would say keep off grass on the front and keep off grass on the back because there's 2 pages right here. This is particularly nice of a feature because if you spend so much time, like let's say you work on a brochure, and you spend so much time on that very first page and getting it exactly the layout that you want and the font size and the coloring and all of these different things. And then you just need to keep that same kind of formatting. Being able to copy this duplicate page option is just so useful rather than having to try to replicate your first page that you did over and over again, potentially. All right. So that is our sign. So for the last bit of class, or the rest of class really, we are going to be messing around with a trifold brochure. So in order to open a brochure, I'm going to go back to File and New. And we're going to go to our built-in templates. So remember, built-in templates are the ones that are saved to your actual computer. So you don't need to be connected to the internet in order to access these. Where if you search for online templates here, which you can definitely do, that's totally up to you, but you would need to be connected to the internet in order to be searching there, which would take you, basically it would search anything that's on the Microsoft Office website that's been uploaded to there. Okay, so what we're going to do, you can see there's different categories of the built-in templates, and we're going to choose brochures. And you can see we have all of these different brochure types. There's tons and tons and tons of different brochure types. Okay, lots and lots and lots to choose. At least 83 to choose from in the more section right here. Okay, so I am going to choose the borders one because that's one that I like. If you look over here on the right-hand side, it's giving us a little preview of what it is going to look like, as well as some options that you can mess around with. For right now, we're not going to mess around with those options. We're just going to choose create. But you could, before you even get started, you could mess around with some of these like the color scheme, font scheme, etc. So I'm going to click on create in order to make our trifold brochure. All right, and you can see it is already has 2 pages on here, so it already has some text, it has some pictures, etc., etc., etc. So we're going to start modifying the template because that's the whole key about templates is yes, it's great because these things are already pre-created, but to some extent you still have to do a fair amount of work to get it to look like the way that you want it to look like. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is mess around with our color scheme because maybe we don't like purple, which this one, for whatever reason, has decided to be all purple. I think this was a color scheme that I had chosen previously and it just remembered it. So what we need to do in order to change this color scheme is to go to the page design tab here. And then in the schemes group is where we're looking at. You can see all of these kind of color schemes. So we have our up arrow, down arrow, and we have the more arrow. If I click on more, look at all of these choices. So many choices to choose from. It's crazy. So choose whatever one that you prefer. Let's say I'm going to go with burgundy, maybe. So various shades of pink, I guess. And you can see how that color scheme has affected these different objects, specifically like this back shape, and then these lines around here, the lines around the edges, the coloring of the text itself. So you can see it affects a lot of things, especially when you are using a template. So now at this point, let's say that there was some color in here that we didn't particularly like. We liked all of the colors, all of these 4 colors that are represented, except for one of them. We didn't like it that much. So what we can do is actually edit this color scheme. So if we click on the more arrow again and choose the create new color scheme, that brings up the existing color scheme and allows us to change whatever colors that we like in here or don't like, is the case may be. So let's say I didn't like this accent one, this very first kind of darker Merlot color. So I can click on the arrow to change the new color. And let's say I'm going to go to more colors. And let's say I actually want it to be kind of like a shade of blue of some kind. Let's do that one. All right. So you can see the current color is down here and then the new color that you are substituting it for is right there. So I'm going to click on OK. And it's giving you a preview of what it's going to look like over here on the right-hand side. So feel free, if you want to choose any other of these different kind of accent colors will affect the various scheme. So once you have it set the way that you want, click on Save. And then that will apply to our existing template. And now you can see up here in the schemes group that there is a new one that says custom. That's the one that you just tweaked. So similar to the color scheme, we can also change the font scheme. So once again, in the schemes group, we're going to click on fonts right here, and we can choose whatever font that we want. So this will affect the entire publication. So let's do Georgia Bold. Sure, why not? If you are not seeing the font that you particularly want in here, you can always do this create new font scheme and choose whatever one that you want in there. Okay, so I'm going to choose Georgia Bold, and now every bit of text has changed to Georgia Bold, including on the second page as well. Okay, the last kind of page design modification that we're going to make at this moment is the margins. So right now there's kind of no margin set, so that's why this blue line is going all the way up to the edge right here. These lines right here are just giving you an idea of where the fold is going to be, aka it's a trifold brochure, so when you fold it, into 3 pieces, that's where the fold is. So I want to give it a margin line so I can have a better idea of where the edge is of the edges of the piece of paper itself. So I'm going to click in the page setup group, I'm going to click on margins, and I want to change it to moderate. So that's 1/2 inch, top, bottom, right, and left. If you want something that isn't in here, then you would choose custom margins, and then you can choose whatever distance that you want from the edge. So I'm going to click on moderate. And you can see now we have these blue lines that popped up around the edge right there. Okay, so that's just giving me a better idea of where I want these panels basically to be. Okay. All right, so the first thing we're going to do now that we have our page design kind of all set up the way that we want it is we're going to move multiple objects together. So because in this case, like let's look at this right-hand panel right here. And the panel is this kind of square or rectangle, sorry. I blanked on the word. All right. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that all of this stuff fits in this panel. So if I click on like this border right here, I can use the move handles and I can drag it to be inside of that margin line and let go. But notice how the picture didn't move, this little line right there didn't move, this text box didn't move. I would have to click, hold, and drag all of these over in order to move every single one of them, which kind of it becomes a pain in the butt. So I'm going to choose undo. So there is an easier way. You can select all of the objects at one time and then move them all at once. So basically imagine that we're going to be creating an imaginary box around all of these objects over here on the right-hand side. So you have to go somewhere outside of all of those objects. So in this case, I'm going to go down here to the bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to use click, hold, and drag, and I'm going to create my little box. You can see it's moving as I go so that it's completely surrounding all of those objects on the right-hand side. So that's going to make everything in that box selected. So once I let go, notice now all of the move handles means that every single one of these is selected. So I can use now this left-hand move handle and I can drag, and watch as I drag, it's going to move every single piece. So if I go up against the margin line right there and let go, there we go. So now it's stretched out all of these individual pieces. So there's 7 individual pieces in here, the different text boxes, the picture, the line, this outside border, and it moved every single one of them. So I'm going to do the same thing because I want it to go up against this right margin line. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag and get my imaginary box around it and let go. They're all selected, and I'm going to click, hold, and drag on the move handle and go up against that margin line and let go. And there we go. So now everything in here is stretched out proportionately as we moved it. I'm going to do the exact same thing on this left-hand side so that my text and this kind of background shape is in the picture is all moved as well. I'm going to go down to the bottom left-hand corner, click, hold, and drag so that it's all selected so that I have my little box around all of them, and let go. And you can see they're all selected right there. So let's do this right-hand side one. Doesn't matter which one you start with. And drag it over until I hit my margin line, let go. There it is. For whatever reason, this one always stays selected, whereas the very first one didn't. So since they're all still selected, I can just use the left-hand middle move handle and then drag it over as well. All right. And then if I click off to the side, then now nothing is selected. Okay, so you can see now on the left-hand side, this one fits with our panel on the right-hand side. So we're just basically moving things all together, making life a little bit easier for ourselves. So now what we're going to talk about is how to group multiple objects together. So it's kind of the same process to an extent. So let's say we wanted to group all of these things in this middle panel together. The reason that you group multiple things together is because you might think that you need to move them in the future. And so you want it to stay completely together rather than, let's say I dragged this off to the side. Well, now this one is up here and all the rest of it is down here. So grouping allows you to keep it together and then be able to move it wherever you need to move it multiple times. So I'm going to use my imaginary little box to try to select everything in this middle panel. And there we go. You can see that there are the move handles around every single one. I will point out you could also, another way to do that is you can click on every individual one. So I could click on the first one and select it. And then you can use Control and click on anything else that you need to add. So I could do Control and click on the business name and the line. It's just hard to do because it's right there. And then the text box and then the other text box. So you see how my cursor has that plus sign right there? That's because I'm holding down Control to select multiple objects, okay? All right, so whatever way you want to do it, either clicking and then using Control and clicking on all of the objects, or click, hold, and drag and doing your imaginary box around all of the objects, whatever you need to do, you have to have all of them selected. And now we're going to go to the Home tab, and in the Arrange group, we're going to choose Group right here. And notice now it's just one big box. So I can move this wherever I want. Let's say I want to move it to the middle of the page. So I can click, hold, and drag, and I can move it to the middle of the page. You can see it pops up pink. Where'd it go? There we go. And then let go. All right, and now it is in the center of the page, and organization, the business name, all of that stuff has moved together. So you can group multiple things together. You can group text and objects and shapes and graphs and pictures, etc. So basically anything that you can insert in here, you can group together and then move it wherever you want on the page. So that's very, very handy. If you ever need to ungroup it, you can simply select the object, all of the things that you group together. And then in the Arrange group, you would choose Ungroup. And now it's individual objects again. So it's totally up to you, whatever you need to do in order to mess with it, basically. Okay, so the next piece that we're going to talk about is building blocks. So building blocks are reusable pieces of content like business information, headings, calendars, borders, advertisements, etc. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab in order to get to my building blocks, which is in this building blocks group right here. So they have the page parts, calendars, borders and accents, advertisements, as I was mentioning. So the first one that we're going to choose is this borders and accents. So there are bars, they have emphasis, they have frames, so you can choose kind of whatever you like. Let me point out real quick, do you notice the different colors of this? Notice how it matches over here on this right-hand side panel. That's because our color scheme, whenever we choose our color scheme, that affects all of the colors that it's showing, okay? So let me go ahead and choose one of these. Let's say I like these little triangles right here. I'm going to click on there. Whenever you insert something in Publisher, it always goes in the dead center of the piece of paper, which I think is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about where your cursor is, where you're clicked, all of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to change the size of this. I could use these move handles right here and change the size, or I can go to this Drawing Tools Format Contextual tab, and in the size group, I can change the size. So let's say I know that I want it to be 0.7 height and then 3.2 width. So I'm just using the up arrows or the down arrows as needed. Okay. So now that I have it the size that I want, I'm going to do click, hold, and drag, and I want to move it up here to the top of the page. So I'm just doing, oops, got to click on it, and then move it, click, hold, and drag. And I'm using these guidelines. Notice the guidelines appear as I'm dragging it. So that's how you know exactly where you are. If you're centered, if you're against your margin lines, it all pops up right there. And then once you have it the way that you want it, let go, and there it is. So I want to create another one of these for the bottom middle panel. So I'm going to do Control C to copy it, and then Control V, like victory, to paste it. There it is. And then I'm just going to do click, hold, and drag again, and drag it down to the bottom. Once again, match it up against my margin lines, and let go. All right, so if we click off to the side, there is the bottom panel. Oops, I don't think I got it right against the edge. Let's just down a little bit. There we go. Okay, now it's there. All right. So the other piece, the other building block that we're going to be using is the advertisements. So we want to put the advertisement right here at this bottom left-hand panel. So, but we want to get rid of this picture first. So I'm going to click on the picture, and then I'm actually going to use backspace on the keyboard, or you could use delete, either way, and it will get rid of it completely. There, it's gone. So now I can put my advertisement right there. So I'm going to go back to the Insert tab, and in the building blocks group, I'm going to choose advertisements. And you can see here are the different kind of advertisement examples that they have. So if you're creating a flyer and you want to create a coupon on there, or put something about, it's, 50% off if you come today, whatever you want to do. So we're going to choose the coupon. We're going to do this very first one right here. And you can see, once again, it inserted it right in the center of our piece of paper. So what I want to do is move it down. So click, hold, and drag down to this bottom left-hand corner so that it's up against the margin lines. And you can see it's going over into our middle panel, which is not what we want. So we're just going to use our move cursors, and we're going to just click, hold, and drag to make it inside of our panel. There we go. And now at this point, this is when you would change any of this text. So you would, click in there and change the text, click in there and change the percentage off, your name, etc. I know it's really super tiny. If you click on the plus sign, you'll be able to see it better. There we go. So then you could go in here and change the phone number. You could change the expiration date, all of that kind of stuff. I'm going to click on minus to make it smaller again, so I can see the entire piece of paper. There we go. Okay. All right. So those are two of the building blocks. I've also used calendars in the past when I've been advertising like certain, especially for my programs, like these computer classes and etc. It's kind of nice to have a calendar so that you can then, select certain dates on there and point out, different things. So I've definitely used calendars before as well, which is a handy feature. Okay. So with that being said, the next thing that we're going to be talking about are placeholders. Placeholders are helpful because it's basically what it sounds like, where it is kind of a box that you're putting on the actual page to represent where you want a picture to be, but you don't necessarily have that picture yet. So let's say I was working on this flyer, this brochure right here with one of my colleagues. And I was in charge of adding all of the text, and then they were going to go in and add in all of the pictures. So in order for me to know where the text should be, it's helpful to have the placeholders there. But in this case, I don't want to have that, like, let's say I don't want to have this picture right here. So I'm going to get rid of this picture, and I want to put a placeholder in right there because I want it to be like, basically, it's like a little roadmap for the person after me saying, this is where a picture should be, is right here. So I'm going to go to, in the Insert tab again, we're going to go to the Illustrations group and choose Picture Placeholder. If I click on there, it inserts a default size one right there. And I want to change the size to 2.5 inches. So if I use the up arrow, and you can see it's changing the height and the width. If you don't want it to change proportionally, you have to click on this little Format Auto Shape Size arrow right here, and you would have to uncheck this Lock Aspect Ratio. If you uncheck that, then you can change the height and width independently of each other to be whatever you want it to be. For right now, it's fine. I'm just going to leave it how it is. So now what I have to do is change where the placement of this is. So I'm going to do click, hold, and drag, and move it. I want it back to where the bicyclist kind of picture was. And notice that pink line lets me know that I'm centered in my actual panel right here. So I'm going to let go, and there it is. Make sure you don't click on this little mountain symbol because that will ask you to insert a picture there, which is at this point not what we want to do. So this way now I know anybody looking at this knows that, oh, this should be a picture. So we don't have the picture yet, but this eventually will be the picture, and it will be exactly this size. If I click off to the side, it kind of disappears. If I move my cursor over it, notice it kind of reappears just kind of with the gray dashes. So that's letting me know once again that this should be a picture. So it's not, it looks like empty space, but it's not. It has a dedicated thing that needs to be there, aka a picture. Okay. So then I would go and I would edit all of the text as I need to edit it. And then after I was done, I would send this to my colleague and then they would go and like, oh, okay, so that needs to be a picture. So let me click on here and then let me insert whatever picture I need to insert on that front panel. And it would be as simple as that, okay? All right, so now we're going to insert multiple photos at once into our publication. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab, and we want to go to Pictures. So in this case, so we remember online pictures are ones that are on the internet, and pictures are ones that are saved to our computer or to our flash drive. In this case, I have them saved to my flash drive. So I'm going to click on Pictures, and I'm going to go to this USB drive is my flash drive, and let me go to the Sample Pictures folder. Okay, so if I want to choose multiple photos at once, all I have to do is click on one of them, and then I would hold down Control on the keyboard and select the other ones. Let's say I want to do 4 different ones. I want the koala and the lighthouse and the sunset. Sure. All right, and then once you have all of the ones selected that you want, then let go of Control on the keyboard, and now all you have to do is click on Insert. And give it a second to think about it. Okay, this is the only time whenever you insert something into Publisher, like I said, it always goes in the middle. The only time that it won't do that is when you're inserting multiple things at the same time. So in this case, because we're inserting more than one picture, it went over here on this gray, it's called the scratch area is what this gray area is called, okay? So, which is kind of nice because it's kind of nice to not have to always have something on your page when you don't know exactly where you want it to be yet. So, all right. Now what we need to do is we're going to actually swap out our picture. So we did our placeholder and now we want to put a picture in where that placeholder is, okay? So the easiest way to do that is to click on our placeholder over here in the right-hand panel to select it. And what we're going to do is hold down Control and choose one of these photos. So whatever one that you want to put right there. So let's say we wanted to do the sunset. So notice how now they're both selected. So I let go of Control. In our Picture Tools Format Contextual tab that just popped up, in the Swap group, we have Swap right here. So we just have to click on Swap, and there you go. Now it's swapped out. All right. Notice our picture placeholder is still here. If we want to get rid of that, we would just click once on it and then use backspace, just like a regular picture to delete it. Okay. And notice how this picture is exactly the same size as what the placeholder was. So it's 2.5 by 2.5. Okay. So it will keep exactly the same size because that's your placeholder. All right. So you can also swap out pictures very quickly by going to this middle mountain symbol that you see how it has an arrow now. If I click, hold, and drag, and let's say I wanted to swap it with a koala. If I drag it over to the koala, notice what just happened. Now the koala is over here and our sunset picture is over there. And you can do it, you know, vice versa, the other way around, etc. Okay. Click on undo, then it will bring it back to the way that we wanted it. So that is how you can swap out pictures very quickly. So you can do that with a placeholder, or you can do that with just regular photos themselves and just click, hold, and drag, or choose multiple photos and choose swap then. Okay, so now we have our very first page. This kind of, basically this is the front of our brochure. This is the back of our brochure. And then that would be that inner piece when you fold it over, okay? So we have all of this set the way that we want. Obviously the text, we haven't modified any of the text in here. Hopefully at this point, you know how to go in there and type in the text that you want to type in. So, all right, so we have everything modified the way that we want it on here, at least for now. So we're going to go to page 2, and now we're going to modify this page. All right, the first thing that we're going to do is insert a shape. So what I want to do first is get rid of this text that says main inside heading. So if I click in this text box, I can right click on it and choose delete object, and it will disappear. So there's nothing right there. So we want to put our shape right here. Okay, so in order to insert a shape in the objects group of the home tab right here, there are shapes. So we have all of these different types of shapes that we have that we can choose from, lots and lots and lots of different ones, which is awesome. I'm going to choose this rounded rectangle. So if I click on rounded rectangle, my cursor changes into the plus sign just like it did for the text box. So I'm going to do click, hold, and drag, and I want it to go kind of where that text was before. All right, and then let go, and there is my shape. Notice once again, this color matches our color over this line right here because it's choosing off of that color scheme. So it's basing it off of the color scheme right there. Okay, so now we're going to modify our shape a bit. So the first thing we're going to do is add a custom color to this shape. So instead of blue, we're looking for a more specific color. Okay, so we're going to go to the shape fill and click on here. So in the drawing tools format contextual tab in the shape styles group, we're going to click on shape fill. Notice the scheme colors. So as I was saying before, we chose our color scheme and that's what it's showing right there. And then we have standard colors, and maybe that's not really what we want. So we want to go to more fill colors. In the more fill colors, we have 3 tabs. We have standard, custom, and Pantone. If you were just choosing a color that you didn't see before in the shape fill menu, you could just choose any one of these and choose a color. It's not a big deal. But we're doing a very specific color. Typically, when you want to do a very specific color like this, it's probably for work. So for example, here at the Oak Creek Library, for our branding for the city, we use 3 very specific colors. So we have a kind of darkish green, we have a darker navy blue, and then we have a light kind of sea blue that we use. So it's very hard if you were just trying to eyeball this and be like, oh yeah, okay, so it's the darker blue, so it's like this blue, right? Well, it kind of looks like it, but I don't think it looks exactly like it. So that's when you need to do the actual custom colors down here with the color model is what we're going to be messing around with. So for like the city of Oak Creek, we have the specific color and it gives us the RGB colors to actually be able to dial it in to the very specific color that we have. So in this case, I'm changing it to a very specific shade of yellow. Let's say that my workplace has this specific shade of yellow as our kind of main scheme color, okay? So I'm going to change the red in here and I want it to be 247. So I'm actually going to type it in rather than use the arrows. Okay. And you can see it already is starting to change the color to reflect it. But obviously that's not yellow, so we need to keep going. So the green needs to be 200. There we go. Once again, changed it. Once again, not yellow. Getting closer though. And then lastly, the blue is 51. There we go. So now that is the exact shade of yellow as what my imaginary employer has. So all you have to do now is click OK, and there it is. There is our very specific shade of yellow. So you can do this for text. So if you need to change the text to a specific color, your shapes, you know, whatever you're inserting, if you need to change that color, then it's in the more fill colors and you can go to the custom tab and actually change it in there. Now that we have the color the way that we want it, we want to change the shape a little bit. If we look at our shape right now, so it has the rounded edges, you can kind of just barely see it. If I click off to the side, there we go. Now you can see it a little bit more. It's rounded, okay? If I click back on it, notice this little yellow diamond. This will help me change the actual shape of the object a little bit more. So if I click, hold, and drag, I can drag it in. Notice what's happening to the edges. If I let go, there we go. So that's a very rounded rectangle. So you can do any kind of degree of your shape as you want. I could go all the way to just having it totally be a rectangle and not rounded at all. So you can change it to whatever way that you want. This applies pretty much to every shape. So if I had chosen a star and I didn't like how the base of it was really, big and stocky and I wanted it skinnier. So there's a lot of different things. Basically, this allows you to affect this kind of, not this shape, not the size, but more the shaping of your actual object. So now that we have it set our shape the way that we want it to be, now we're going to add text to this. In the Insert Shapes group right here, we're going to choose Edit Text. And now you can see there's a flashing cursor in here. So I'm going to type in the text that I want in there. It's going to be yearly information. Oops, I clicked off to the side. Yearly information. And I'm going to press Enter. Oops, would help if I spelled information correctly. And let's do 2020. Okay. All right, now I want to format this text. So I'm going to do Control A to select all of the text in this text box. And then in our text box tools format contextual tab, in the alignment group, I want it to align its center. So I'm going to do align center horizontally and vertically in the text box again. And then what's kind of cool, rather than messing around with the size, you could go instead to this text group and go to text fit. And if you choose best fit, it will automatically make it the size, the best fitting size to actually fit within your shape. Okay. Once again, you have to believe me because of how it's rounded. That's why this, it doesn't look like it fits completely to it, but because of how it's rounded, this is the best fit that you're going to get inside of this shape. So if I click off to the side, there is our finished shape with our text inside of it. Now we're going to talk about how to link text boxes. So before we talk about how to link a text box, we're going to remove all of this extra text in here, which you can see is Latin for whatever reason. Most of it is Latin. Okay, so I'm going to click in this very first text box to select everything, and I'm going to use backspace to delete it. I'm going to get rid of this picture too. Bye-bye. Okay, so this first text box is completely empty, so I can type in, if you wanted to start typing in, you can type in whatever text that you want. We're not going to do that. I'm going to show you a different way in a second. I want to get rid of the text in the middle text box. So if I click on here, I'm going to do Control A to select all of it and use backspace to get rid of it. Notice how it got rid of the text over here. We'll talk about that in just a second. Okay. So, but the key thing is now all of our text boxes are empty except for this very bottom one, which has our business name and all that kind of stuff. We're going to leave that one alone. So a linked text box basically means that I could copy and paste text into like this first text box. And if it's linked to this next one, any overflow, so anything that doesn't fit inside of this text box would go to this text box. And then any overflow that didn't fit in that text box would go to the next text box, and so on and so forth. So this is kind of a unique example because there's multiple text boxes. If you only have one text box, then you don't need to link it. There's no point in that. You would just copy and paste whatever you need to put in there, and then you can resize the text box to be however big or small that you want in order to fit all of the text. But because this is going into 3 different panels, that's why we're going to link these together. All right, so notice this first one has just the standard move handles over here on the edges, right? If I click on this middle one, notice how there's an arrow over here that's pointing to the right-hand side. This is a visual cue to let you know that this text box is actually already linked to the text box over here on the right. If I click on this text box, notice there's an arrow over here pointing to the left-hand side, okay? That's a visual cue letting me know that that text box is linked to this first one right here, okay? So for some reason in this brochure, they didn't link the very first text box, which doesn't make sense to me. You would have these two be linked together, but then not this very first one. Okay, so we need to change that. So what we need to do is go to, we are going to this linking group right here in the text box tools format contextual tab, and we're going to choose create link. So we were in this very first text box, and now we want to link it to this one. So you see how there's a picture right here? If I move over to the middle one, which is where I want it to go to, you can see my picture has changed and tipped over, and look what's coming out of it, letters. I know, how cute is that, right? So if I just simply click on this middle text box, now it's linked together. So you can see there's an arrow pointing to the left. If I click on this first text box, now there's an arrow pointing to the right. So now all three of these are going to be linked together. Okay. So now what we need to do is actually put text in here. You could simply just type in text. So I could type in a whole bunch of stuff and just keep on going. Eventually you would get to the bottom of the text box, and then it would just automatically move the rest of it over here to this middle text box. Okay. But in this case, we're going to be copying and pasting text into our text box rather than having to type all of the text that we need. So what we want to do, I'm going to open Internet Explorer. So I'm going to go down here and click on the blue E for Internet Explorer. And I'm going to go to Wikipedia, the online encyclopedia. And I'm going to look for Oak Creek, Wisconsin. There we go. I click on Oak Creek. So you can copy and paste from whatever source that you want, really. I'm going to go down, and under demographics, I'm going to choose all of this data under demographics. So I'm just doing click, hold, and drag to select all of this. Okay. All right. So once I have it selected, I'm going to do Control C to copy. And I'm going to go back down and go to my publisher and go specifically to my brochure. And now I need to paste it in here. So it's in the very first text box. So I'm going to do Control V for pasting and give it a second to think about it. And there it is. Okay. So you can see it went from this first text box right here. And after it filled all of this text box up, then it went to the second text box and then went down. And once it filled up this text box, went to the far right panel text box. So that is a linked text box. That's the advantage, is you don't have to think about it and worry about the text and where it's going to fall. You can just link them all together and then copy and paste text, or just type in text and have it kind of overflow into those different boxes. Okay, so now I want to get rid of this last picture right here. We're going to talk about how to add captions. So you can see that this picture right here has a caption, but we don't want this picture. So I'm going to click on the picture and use backspace to get rid of it. Notice how my text now has gone over here. That's because the picture was taking up the space where the text has been. Don't worry about that. We're going to move on. We'll worry about it in a second. Okay, so what I want to do is add a caption to one of these photos, whichever one that I want, over here on the right-hand side. So I'm going to click on the picture that I want. Let's say I want this desert picture. I'm going to click on the plus sign down here at the bottom right corner just so that I can see it a little bit better. Okay, let's go up to 190 so I can see it nice and zoomed in. So we're going to add a caption, which is just text underneath, or it can really be on any side of this actual picture. So we need to go to the Picture Tools Format Contextual tab, and then we're going to go to the Picture Styles group and click on Caption. And you can see it gives us all these different lovely choices. So choose whichever one that you like. Let's say I wanted this one underneath. There we go. Okay. Now I'm just going to click where it says Picture Caption, and I'm going to type in whatever text that I want here. So let's say I'm going to type, let's say that this caption is going to be 2000 to 2010. There we go. Okay. If the text in here doesn't fit, then you would need to either change the font size of the text, or you would have, then it would get a little tricky because you'd have to ungroup these objects because these are considered separate objects. And then you would have to change just the size of this text box, essentially. Okay, so then you'd have to regroup them together. It becomes a whole thing. The easier way, though, is just to change the font size itself. All right, let's say that I wanted a slightly different color here. So I'm going to go to the Drawing Tools Format Contextual tab. And in the Shape Styles group, let's say I wanted to change the outline color. So I'm going to go to Shape Outline. And you can choose whatever color that you want. Let's say I want black. Okay, there it is. Click on black. And wanted to change the weight of that line because it's a little skinny, if I go back to shape outline and I choose weight, I can make it a little bit thicker. Although if I make it too thick, now the text is going to disappear. Let's do 1.5 points. There we go. Okay. All right. So there's lots of different things that you can edit with this caption, but for now, we'll just leave it as that. So I'm going to choose the minus sign to zoom back out so that I can see my entire piece of paper again. Let me zoom back out a little bit more. What was 60%? All right, so you can see now the caption is still there. It's just smaller. I just zoomed in so that I could see it a little bit better. Now what I want to do, let's say I want to move this up here to the right-hand panel instead. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag and move this picture up here to the right-hand panel. Move it to the kind of corner right there. There we go. You can see the text automatically moves. Let's say I want to make it a little bit bigger. Click, hold, and drag, make it bigger. There it is. Okay. And once again, the text just completely moved over. Alrighty. Okay. So that is the caption. The last thing that we're going to talk about is how to save this as a picture. So you can save things in here as individual files, or you can save the entire publication as a file. The first thing we're going to talk about how to do is save an individual image. Specifically, this picture that we just put a caption on with the desert, let's say that we wanted to save this as an image just by itself. So it wouldn't save any of the piece of paper, etc. It would only save the picture and then the caption. You might want to do this sometimes if you add additional things to your picture, like in this case, how we added a caption, or let's say you added a shape and then you grouped it together, then you might want to save it as one whole picture itself, one whole image. So the easiest way is to select the image that you want to save and right click, and we're going to do save as picture. And you can see it brings up this box, and let's save it to our pictures folder. And you can name it whatever you want to name it. I'm going to change it to desert with caption. There we go. And then I'm going to choose save. Okay. So if I bring that up just independently, just so that you guys get an idea of what that looks like, if I click on the computer symbol and go to the folder that I saved it to, the pictures folder, there's desert with caption. If I double click on it to open it, just a second, there it is. So before, what in the pictures folder, like in my actual flash drive where I have it saved, it's just the desert. But now I've saved it with the actual caption. So it's saved as one image with both of those pieces. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you. All right, I'm going to close out of there. Now we're going to talk about how to save our entire publication as an image. Sometimes you might want to do that if, like, for example, let's say you're sending this to somebody and they don't have publisher. There's no way for them to open it and to actually view it unless you save it as a different type of file. Or let's say that you need to post it on a website and it won't accept publisher files, or you want to show it just as a picture, not as an actual publisher file. So in order to do that, you want to go to the File tab. And let me point out real quick, we are on page 1 right now, not page 2. Because there's multiple pages, it only can do one page at a time. So when we go to save it, whatever page that you're on, that's what it's going to save it as, the picture. If you want to save both of these, you would have to do it independently. So I'm going to save number 1 as a picture, and then I would do all the steps. And then I would go back, click on page 2, and then do all the steps and save that as a picture. So let me go to page 1. I'm going to go to File, and I want to choose Save As, and you want to choose wherever you want to save it to. So I'm going to go to Browse, and let's go to the Pictures folder again. And I'm going to change the file name to page 1 brochure. Why not? And then click on Save. Okay, so now once again, if I go to the computer symbol and bring it up, and I'm going to go to my pictures folder, and here's page 1 brochure. Oh, did I not change it as I didn't? Sorry, I made a mistake. Let's try that again. I have to go to File, Save As, choose my folder. The problem is I didn't do the Save As type. That's a key thing. So I chose the correct folder, I gave it the correct name, but I didn't give it the correct type. So where it says publisher files, I need to change it to whatever image file that I want. So a GIF, a JPEG, tag, PNG, whatever you want or need it to be. JPEG is the most common, so that's what I'm going to choose it to be as. Okay. All right, so now that I have the correct file type, that's very important as we just learned, I'm going to click on save. All right, there we go. So let's try this again. Go back down, and in my pictures folder, here's page 1 brochure. If I double click on there, there we go. There it is. So now this is saved as a picture. So I can't, so if you were sending this to somebody, they couldn't edit it in any way really. It's only they're viewing it as the picture. So if I wanted to save page 2, I would click on save on page 2, right? So I'm back in Publisher, click on page 2, there it is. Go to File, Save As, go to the folder that I want to save it to, in this case, Pictures. I'm going to change the name of it to page 2 brochure. And very importantly, save as type is JPEG, and then click on Save. And give it a second. All right, go back to the folder. And there we go. So we have page 1, and then here's page 2. If I double click on it, second, there we go, page 2. Okay. All righty, I'm going to click on and close out of that. Okay, so I hope that you learned a couple of new things about Publisher that you didn't know before. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at the library's general email, which is library@oakcreekwi.org. And I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.